In the previous lecture, we went over one of our first operators, and that was the plus sign or addition. So essentially what we looked at was doing something like, for example, 1 plus 1 equals 2. So I'm just going to show you a few of the other ones we can look at now, the different operators. And I've put together some interesting HTML and JavaScript to help illustrate the point. So I'm just going to just very quickly show you what I've done, just to help to talk through some of the JavaScript that we've already learned, mainly using functions. So what I've decided to do is put a button on the bottom that calls a function called calculate. And essentially what I've done is I've created a function called calculate here, which takes in 4 different parameters. So we can put in 2 numbers, which I'm calling x and y, and so I'm going to create a variable from both x and y to provide z, and then we're going to get an element by ID, and which ID it is actually fed into the function here. So for example, on the first one I'm using plus, and then what happens after that is we've given a 4th parameter here, and what we do is we add the message and z. So for example, I might put a message of 3, I'll use just letters to illustrate the point, plus 1 equals, so that's the message, and so then that will output that and z, well, hopefully. And I'm actually going to use single quotations because we're already using the double quotes here, so that would just confuse things a lot. So you want to use single quotations if it's within the double quotations already. So if I refresh this now, you will see what comes out nicely is that because I've put in 1 and 3, so those are the first 2 parameters, that's going to be fed in here as x and y. So we're going to get z equals 1 plus 3, and then we're going to get element by ID, and the third thing I'm putting in is plus, and that's the ID here for this paragraph, and then I'm putting in this message that's outputting message plus RZ, which is the product of our calculation. So it's just something fun I put together to help illustrate the point here. So you don't need to pay too much attention to it, just a bit of fun. So next we're going to go on to looking into minus. So let's illustrate the point by doing, let's have 50 and 10. Now we want to put the ID in of minus. And I won't bother putting in a message each time, just maybe calculation. And let's see what else we need to do. In our function, we'll change the plus to a minus. There we go, calculation 40. So the next one we're going to use is multiplying. So for multiplying, we use the asterisk, which on my keyboard, for example, and most people's keyboard, is going to be Shift 8. It might be different on yours, so be sure to check. But it's the little sort of star-looking sign that's a bit higher than the middle. So I just want to show you what that's like. So we could just do 50 times 100. Let's go for 50 times 5. And the idea is multiply. So that's 250, fantastic. The next thing is division. So let's do 50 divided by 5. Why not? I'm just going to use the ID divide. I'm going to change the operator from multiply to divide. And a divide here is a backslash. That's all we need to put. So we're going to do x divided by y, or how many times can y go into x? So here, how many times can 5 go into 50? So we're going to get 10 as the answer. Now what's interesting is if I were to put, for example, 6, obviously that's not going to be a clean whole number. So it gives us some decimal points, which is very helpful. Now increments is very interesting. So instead of it actually, and I can't really use this function here because we're only having one number really. So incrementing essentially is like adding 1 to something. So let's say, for example, we had x, or let's just say number equals 50. if we were to then, what we'll do actually is I can alert instead of doing that. So I'll just change this. Okay, actually let's just forget that. So essentially what we do when we use plus plus is that we add 1 to 50. So if we were to then go number plus plus, then number would then be equal to 51. Now plus equals is a very useful one. So what we could do, let's say we wanted to change var number and we wanted it to become 55, then we might do something like this: number equals number plus 5. And that would end up with number being 50, because we're saying number is now equal to number, which was 50. So number is equal to 50 plus 5. So number would be equal to 55. There's a shorthand in JavaScript which is very helpful, where you can just do plus equals 5. And that's basically a shorthand for saying add 5 to number. So number is now equal to itself plus 5. So those are some of the main operators. There are a few others, but I want to keep things simple and just using the ones that are immediately helpful. The other ones will come naturally along the way. So I also just wanted to show you a cool way that we can use functions and adding these different parameters to make things quite interesting. And what I thought was cool to show is that not only can we add in little things like numbers and stuff like that, but we can actually put in IDs themselves. So we can actually use functions and say which ID to change, as long as we just add that in as a parameter and put that in the get element by ID. But the main thing to take away is just that we have these different operators. We can add numbers together. We can also add strings together. So play around with these operators yourself. You don't have to do anything at all as fancy as what I've done here with the functions. You can literally just do something like alerting or something like that. So if you wanted to remove all this stuff, for example, we could literally just have something like alert. Let's have an x and y. Var x equals 5, var y equals 10, var z equals x plus y, alert z. I mean, you could do something just like that, and that would work just as fine. A much simpler way of just testing out how you can do adding, you can do multiplying, divisions, anything like that. Just make sure that you have a go at playing around with these different operators and you just get used to doing this. So have a go yourself, and then I'll see you in the next lecture.